Well, how many of you believe that we are living in a most unpredictable era of the business history? I believe that. It's interesting because the volatility is occasionally changing weather, geographic conditions, or political ups and downs makes any enterprises face a lot of challenges. And here we have the leaders talking on the same. The question is, how do great leaders actually transform these uncertainty into business prospects? Well, this is a mind-blowing topic. Let us understand from their perspective. From risk to opportunity, leadership strategy for a volatile world. To moderate this session, we have a dynamic leader joining us, founder and CEO of Enterprise World, Mr. Dhruv Apte. Can we have a huge round of applause for our moderator, please? And as we all know, perhaps that what defines leadership today is not the ability to predict the future, but the courage and the agility to actually shape it. Joining us are the leaders in distinguished domain. Our first panelist is Dr. Victor Tay, Group CEO of Global Catalyst Advisory, a globally recognized sustainability strategist and investment banker who advises governments, business investors on climate action, sustainability, and long-term value creation. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have a huge round of applause and welcome Dr. Victor on the stage. So let the powerful and the meaningful conversation begin with the next panelist joining us, Kelvin C. Green, founder and chief cybersecurity advisor at CyberSec. Cybersecurity leader helping organizations bridge the gap between technology, human behavior, and most importantly, digital excellence. Can we have a huge round of applause and welcome Kelvin C. Green? Today, we are very honored to have Professor Dr. Ibrahim Himazi, Head of Marketing and Faculty and Marketing Professor at the American University. A renowned educator, a former parliamentarian, and one of the leading voices of marketing and consumer behavior across the Middle East. Can we have a huge round of applause and welcome Professor Dr. Ibrahim? Thank you, sir, for joining in. Next joining us is Mr. Jim Dunn. We have also known him as the President and CEO of LD Human Capital Consulting. Respected human capital strategist who helps organizations strengthen leadership, talent, organizational performance for people-centered transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Jim Dunn. Thank you for joining in. Up next is finally Nick Maynard, co-founder and CEO of US Ignite, a respected innovation and economic development leader who spans the White House and regional innovation ecosystem, helping communities turn emerging technologies into sustainable growth opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause and welcome Mr. Nick on the stage, please. Well, I'll request our moderator and the leader to commence and navigate us through this absolutely phenomenal panel, because I believe totally that the resilient leaders don't wait for stability. In fact, resilient leaders are those who create the stability. So let's hear their perspective. Thank you for joining me.
As we move towards this panel discussion B, we all know over the last few years, leaders across industries have faced unprecedented disruption, maybe economic uncertainty, be it rapid technological changes, or cybersecurity threats, or shifting consumer behavior and expectations, talent shortages, and geopolitical challenges as well. So, but history has shown us that disruption often creates opportunity. Some organizations emerge stronger, some leaders emerge stronger, more innovative, and more resilient as well, while others struggle to adapt to the revised or changed situation. Today's discussion explores a critical leadership question: how can leaders transform uncertainty into opportunity and build organizations that thrive in a volatile world. So to start with, I have a common question for all of you, and then we'll be having individual questions. So my first question will be, every major disruption, whether economic, technological, geopolitical, or social, creates both winners as well as losers. In your view, what separates leaders who see opportunity from those who only see a risk? I'll like to start with Victor.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. And in here, I wonder how many of you are actually in the disruptive industry? Can I show of hands? Okay. And I guess in here, many of us will have think that this is a very unprecedented era, that we think that most of the industries are disrupted, or maybe you who put up your hands are also those who disrupt others. And why? You just need to flip the papers and you see Anthropic's frontier model for AI. And it looks like it's even able to penetrate through cybersecurity of the US defense. And what about the bank? That's worrying. It's unprecedented. And for some of you, where you're looking at energy crisis, the Straits of Hormuz issue, and I think my colleague from Greg from UAE was telling me about how they were disrupted too. And here it is for energy crisis. We looked at it, and for, I think, unprecedented, we looked at how do we get energy in some countries just a few months ago, but only left with about 30 days, less than a month of that oil capacity and storage. And in here, and many others that you have also highlighted, that AI, technology, here it is, disrupting, even taking away jobs. Is this very unprecedented? I think if we all ask ourselves, looking back at history and observation, we saw the Romans thought that when they came out at a period from the Greek, they came out with a parliamentary system, they came out with the entire modern days or Renaissance, they thought it was unprecedented too. At a period when it was a steam engine that came about, and they were actually taking away jobs from the railways and automating. The workers thought that their jobs would be taken away. And they thought it was unprecedented as well. And much closer to, we see in Asia, financial crisis in 1997, the Asians thought it was unprecedented. Koreans signed a loan, unprecedented loan with a World Bank, and looks like it's a downfall for them. But looks at where Korea is right now. And of course, from history we saw, from those days where even in the Black Death in the Venice and Venetian, and of course that came about with the Renaissance as well. So we actually were to look into this part that if what makes a leader, the question is, that able to differentiate between this unprecedented crisis and the ability to come up with the opportunity. I think it lies in the part that let's look at the history and what patterns we can draw. Some leaders actually looks at history as an episode, an incident, an event. The successful leaders look at it as a transition. And here it is, if you looked at it, that what differentiate when the steam engine came about, when the steam generator came about and engine came about, the Luddites, if you remember history, Luddites came about and they were resistance. They felt that all machineries are evil. And they would actually go around to factories at night and they try to destroy all the machineries thinking that they can stop all this unemployment. The Luddites did what they did, but of course someone created General Electric. And General Electric, beyond that power that the first lamp and light that Edison did, which then later on now in multiple industries. And we see, of course, with every one of these challenges, when the information came about, internet, with their connectivity, and we looks at it that it looks at privacy is a problem, but we saw others actually looked at beyond the information overload and privacy. They created Meta, they created Amazon, they created Google. They were successful. And so what does this leader see that we do not see? And in here, we also see in Blockbuster. Blockbuster was, in those days, were renting the DVDs and renter, etc. They were given the opportunity to buy Netflix, but they did not buy it. And the reason is, at that time around, they recognized that that was a threat. And of course, now Netflix is a success. Blockbuster actually died. So I guess if you looked at it, ships are built for rough water. And I guess in here, leaders as well, we are not built for just peacetime. We are built for unprecedented risk time. The leadership that is able to point out clarity when there's uncertainty, to be able to give confidence to the period and the era of the cohort for their staff and for their peers, that define the ability to change risk to opportunities. Hope that answers your question.
Now, moving to you, sir.
Yep. So uncertainty. We were all getting a nice lesson earlier in the regenesis about uncertainty and how your brain is programmed to basically want to find a pattern, to do the same thing over and over and over again. So when people are faced with uncertainty and how you get the leader separated from it is basically, well, when you see it, your perspective on it. If you say, hey, this happened and I'm uncomfortable, I'm scared. What am I going to do? And if I change and I adapt, then this uncertainty becomes my window to opportunity, meaning I can find the most success in that uncertainty. But my brain is wired to want that certainty so I can be comfortable. So what separates leaders are the ones who can say, hey, I'm going to disconnect myself from that survival mechanism to want to go say, hey, let me be safe and go find a new path into certainty to live in that uncertainty and succeed in it. So success comes in uncertainty. That's where you get leaders from.
Yeah, truly said. It's important to find that window. Yeah. Moving to you.
First of all, let me get out of this session and really thank you very much, the organizers. You've done a wonderful job, and I think you are an example of adaptability and agility with challenges. I know that you used to do it in Dubai. Now we are in Singapore, and obviously this is a way of saying good leaders and winners are those who can, number one, are very agile. Number two, are very adaptive to circumstances. And resilience is very important, meaning that you should not look for profitability when you are in these kind of challenges. You look at your mission, your core objective of your business. And then, please, and I saw it even in Egypt and in the Middle East, don't downsize, because when you downsize, you cannot go back again. And I think this is good examples. You are a good example, and that's why I wanted to thank you for being what you are, for sticking to your mission, and for adaptability and agility. You have a wonderful team. I was talking with my colleague from the United States, that spirit, I see it in your eyes as young generations. I'm an old generation, but you are the future, and I think you are a good example of winners. Thank you.
Ditto. Let me say, again, I echo, this has been great. I have like 10 pages of notes over there, and the morning's been really great, so thank you for putting this on. As it relates to uncertainty, I'm the HR guy on the panel, so I'll be coming from that perspective. I think it's important for leaders to articulate to employees and organizations that uncertainty is not new. If you think about our career, there's been waves of uncertainty. So it's just part of who we are. There's going to be another wave of something we don't know. So I encourage my leaders and clients to describe the uncertainty and be honest about what the organization and the leaders really can control. Like I think I heard this morning, in the US, we had to shift away from diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives based on an external environment that's happening in the government. We didn't see that coming, but we had to acquiesce, and organizations needed to change. There will be another wave. So I think, leaders need to understand that it's not a fad that we're going through uncertainty. We will continue to go through uncertainty, but you have to help employees learn how to manage through it, to get rid of that fear and flight and all of that. And I think once you can do that, and I think I heard someone this morning, the uncertainty brings transformation. Well, I don't want to talk about transformation until you make me feel safe about what is this uncertainty going to do for me. Once I understand that, now I can embrace transformation. So I think it's important for leaders to be honest and say, look, I can't control this, but this is where we are, and this is how we're going to work through it. And by the way, there's a new set of skills that we need now, and maybe we can begin to train you for those.
Yeah, thank you. So US Ignite, our focus is on cities, regions across the US that are faced with the toughest insecurity, whether economic, political. We work with lots of different stakeholders across that city to identify specific challenges, identify specific vision, not just for next quarter or next year, but next 5, 10 years. And then how do we identify new tools, whether it's AI, other technologies, to really drive new startups, new services for those communities that have been left behind by that uncertainty.
So it's very important for every leader to hold the ground and don't downsize it and find that particular window that can turn risk and uncertainty into opportunity. So I'll now lead to individual questions from you, Victor. So across all the organizations that you advise, what are the most significant risks that leaders are currently facing?
That's quite a deep question, and all of you here are leaders of organization, and I guess all of you had different perspective to what these are. We advise government clients, and some of my government clients across Saudi, Qatar, UAE, and I think one of our clients, without naming the country, was looking at supply chain issues, and notably food. Particularly in that part, we knew COVID came about, and we almost had the grocery runs at sometimes supermarket ran out of food, and food security became a big problem. That's one of our clients in the government. And we have another in our government client that asks us about the AI ethics and how do you prevent this advancement of AI that eventually might be autonomous and ran away, and what are the guardrails so that we do not, in the process of doing this automation, it somehow also self-destruct in our security aspect and every other. So that was the second of our government advisory that we did. And we have another one that actually looks into about energy sustainability, because energy prices has gone up, electricity has gone up too. So they were looking at us doing sustainability, carbon credits, and putting a hybrid over the ability to put in the revenue from contribution energy to the grid, and at the same time do carbon credits to offset it, and therefore they looked at energy was one part of their problem. But of all these different issues, and I believe on the ground you will name a lot more, and so are my panelists too. But beyond this, I felt the biggest risk that we ever had, and we look back at history too, it's about the human thinking process. And in here, I noted, and if you've seen the history that just now I mentioned in the first round of discussion, the historical part of what makes the Romans, or the biggest empire we've seen from Alexander the Great, who conquered from Macedonia, Egypt, South Asia, Middle East, etc., and even the Mongolia, Genghis Khan that did from China, Mongolia, China, Europe, and Middle East, they took great empire, but why do they actually decline? And likewise, if we bring it closer to the corporations, if you remember from Kodak that invented camera and films, and here it is, what makes them later on close down? A Polaroid. They are not short of intellect to create photography, but they neglected something. And likewise, I think we have seen a Nokia phone of those days. I'm one of the first users of Nokia. And they invented phones, and they were highly popular. But when smartphone came, they get wiped out. So what's the biggest risk that we have for organization? I felt it's the thinking process, thinking that what makes us successful now is the exact formula for us to be successful later on and in future. And they zealously, rigorously protect that. And even for those who want to disrupt it, they actually want to purge them off. And that's actually alarming, because with that, you realize that not only they do not progress, but they actually purge those who actually highlight the risk part. So in totality, I'm trying to highlight that I think to every one part of this era that we see, I think this risk, there's an opportunity, like all my panelists highlighted, to actually overcome it as an opportunity. Or if not, I think the greatest part we need to offset ourselves is, I think human minds do not stop to innovate. But I guess the rare moment that we try to put on guardrails against innovation, that will be a problem. Yeah, that's one of the risks.
Now, moving to Kelvin, we often see cybersecurity as a defensive function. So how can organizations transform cybersecurity into a competitive advantage?
So in the past, the amount of information that we had on the internet or on our computers was a lot less. As time progressed, we put a lot more on there. With that being said, your information is about you, and it's your most sacred and precious data. So just to give you a little perspective on that, think about your health. What if I told you right now, all of you that have on a smartphone, I mean a smartwatch or something like that, like a Fitbit, that you've given out data right now about your health? What if I told you that at nighttime, that everything you do is recording? So let's just say that perhaps you and someone were to engage in certain activities around 11 p.m., that this was being recorded by your smartwatch, but you're not thinking about it. You don't want that information to get out. How long, how much your heart rate went up or went down for that matter. With that being said, no organization right now is really putting out to say that, hey, this exists and we can help you protect it. What if I told you that my selling point was not just that I could capture that information, but I can keep it from getting out to anyone else? Now, security has become more a part of my sales position to you because I'm offering you something that my competitor isn't, meaning you're not thinking about just protecting myself, but I'm offering you as a sales, so a key feature that I can keep your data protected. So the way to get it from being just defensive is to say, hey, you got this data and you do want to protect it, but we're going to go out another step and say, hey, we're going to sell you the idea that we're going to keep your data safe. And that's what people really want to hear, is that cognitive bias, that safety that they need to get. We can talk about that next time. But that safety. So what people really need is that level of safety. So if you offer security as a metric of safety, then it will go from defensive to offensive.
My next question is about the consumer behavior mainly. So consumer behavior changes rapidly during periods of uncertainty. So how can organizations identify those opportunities hidden with these shifts, consumer behavior shifts?
Well, first of all, consumers won't stop buying anyway, but they reprioritize their purchase behavior. And so now we have created, out of these challenges times, we have 4 different profiles of consumers. Those who just buy the necessity products and that's it. And those who actually postpone buying products. And the third is actually those who, we can call them, they buy affordable luxury. And then there is the fourth one who just live day by day. They don't make any kind of rational decisions, and they live, as we say, day by day. It doesn't mean that they don't have money, but they just take it day by day. So when you have these 4 profiles, I mean, usually companies, what they do is they have to start doing social listening online to try to detect what's the target, what's the segments that they want to reach. And then second, they have to look for value for money. People change now. The issue of luxury and quality products is not enough anymore because financial disturbances that takes place globally makes customers nowadays and consumers are more rational in their decision. So you have actually trying to be flexible in the payments. We have something, we call it the fighter brand. Fighter brand is versions of the big brands, the luxurious brand, into more smaller, less quality, but still durable as products. And then you also have the bundles. So companies have started, as I said before, to be agile, to forget about the past and look at the present, and to adapt to the current circumstances. And I think AI, from Dr. Roger and my colleagues who talked before, it is playing a major role now to help companies. So, and I totally support you, Dr. Roger, when you talked about AI will not control us. We are the controllers. Sometimes when you use AI, it hallucinates. So we have to advise them in the right track again in terms of the prompt. And we have technology called nowadays the prompt engineering. It depends on what you say to the AI that will give you the feedback. I think this is what created out of the challenges, whether starting from COVID, then we have the Russian war, and then you have the Gaza war, and then now we have, I don't know what's coming, as you said. So there is something coming, and I think if you are not adaptive enough, then you doom failure at the end of the day. And I think this is the trend.
So, Jim, I guess workforce is at the center of every disruption or disturbance, I would say. And it's like workforce disruption is affecting every industry almost. And how can leaders turn talent challenges into growth opportunities?
Yeah, it goes back to, again, clarity of defining the actions. You know, as I've been a sitting, similar to other HR folks, CHRO, I've listened to myself and my peers and the CEO. We're like, leaders should be doing this. And why are leaders not doing that? And I said, well, we're not doing it. And that's because they're watching us. We don't have clarity around the disruption or the uncertainty. And until we get it, we're not going to push it down. So I say be very clear on what the disruption is, whether it's AI and all of those things. And then people will get it. I think organizations sometimes forget. People are smarter than they don't want it. They hear it in the news. They hear it externally. They're just waiting on their organization to help them out with that. And I think sometimes we get lost in that we're managing employees based on their jobs. And employees no longer want jobs. They want journeys. And so I need to know if staying in this role is going to be the journey I want or not. I'm not mad at you for the disruption. You may not have nothing to do with it. But explain it to me, be very clear, and let people make their choice. And so I work with a lot of leaders who, they don't know how to do that. CEOs are like, I'm telling my executive team, but they're not pushing it down. What is that? Because they're not clear. They're not intentionally not pushing it down, but you're not clear. And you know, it's pretty cool being a consultant on the other side, because when I was a sitting CHRO, I couldn't tell my boss that. I couldn't say, you're not clear, because it's my job, right? But now I can sit and tell the CEO, they're lost because they're not getting that clarity for you. So clarity is how I think a lot of organizations can get past all of these things.
Great. And my first question to you, Nick, is when federal priorities shift overnight, how do you keep your team's momentum intact?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we spent a lot of time working with both sides of the aisle, lots of different parties, lots of different stakeholders, making sure that we are able to communicate to lots of different folks on Capitol Hill in ways that they can understand, they can appreciate, and they can see the value of these programs. That's how those programs continue and succeed over the long term, so that they can think back how their district can, or their state, or their region can benefit from these programs, whether it's regional innovation, startup support programs, research and development programs, technology transfer efforts. These are all things that are important to every person that we deal with every day, is giving it, distilling it down into a language that they can understand and appreciate.
Great. Now, coming to the next round of questions. Victor, you mentioned about COVID crisis, the energy crisis. So my question is, during such periods of uncertainty or transitions, what should leader focus on? Should they focus on protecting existing business models, or they should try reinventing them?
That's a good question. That's almost like a standard question of, do we in wartime invent swords? Or do we actually do more shield? And in here, I guess it is highly debatable, and every one of us could put our hands on how we wish to do it. But in here, it brings me to something interesting that I noticed of a Japanese culture. I wonder if any one of you are from Japan here? Anyone on the ground? Nope, no one from Japan? I actually recently got exposed to this Japanese pottery. And in the pottery, what it does, I noticed there's one shop I go into. Every part of the pottery had extremely different patterns of line with gold underlined all throughout the potteries. And the patterns are all different. There are about almost 50 of them with different patterns. And I asked them, what is that? How do you do that? Or what is it for? So they told me that is what they call a technique called kintsugi. And kintsugi means that these are all broken potteries. They took all the broken potteries, instead of discarding and throw them away, they gelled them together, and they used the most expensive gold and glue them together. And that's why the 50 of them are all different. And because of that, that actually is more expensive than your normal pottery. And that brings me back to the question here that in here, do we innovate or do we protect it and not break it down? And I guess in here, many businesses, entrepreneurs, perhaps should take note of this opportunity just like the pottery. When you break something down, actually you can glorify it. And I guess what Kintsugi has done was, to all the broken pieces that we said, while the value of it has dropped to zero, they actually were to then gel it together in multiple unpredictable patterns, and the value has gone up 10 times or 20 times more. And I think this crisis that throughout history that we have seen, just not too long ago, COVID, we thought that we will never overcome COVID. There were mass death. We thought we will never see jobs anymore. We thought we never could ever get out of our house, right? And here it is. We took the best opportunity, we transformed it. And even if you look at the past of financial crisis, when the Lehman Brothers crisis happened, fintech came about. And financial technology, fintech, highlighted looks, the big banks are actually bureaucratic. We can actually break it down. And I guess that's what leaders should do, looking at it in business models, all their practices. This is a good time to break it down, glorify it, strengthen it, and the ability to strengthen it and show it to the world that now we are so much stronger. And we see all the Fortune 50, 500 companies. Most of the stronger ones are the ones who had gone through various crises, reinvent themselves, and actually started to put in like a kintsugi, a new strength, and put in all their broken parts with these gilded parts all together. So I guess in here, I think what should be looking at is, I think we should always be looking into innovating. I guess we should never stop questioning. And in here, every part of this crisis is an opportunity to strengthen us. And in Chinese, there is a word. How many of you understand Chinese culture? Right, okay, quite a few of you. In Chinese, the word crisis, the word is called wei ji. And this two words, wei means risk, crisis, rather risk. Ji means opportunity. Why did they gel the two words together? Because the ancient Chinese felt to every crisis, there's an opportunity. The old wise men knew about it, and a adage that we now adopted. And I guess, to your question, I think that's the way we should see it.
So I again want to talk about the digital risks that we face every day. So according to you, what is the most underestimated digital risk businesses face today?
So Melissa's not going to like me for this, but liking things, so up and down. So, you know, when you go onto Facebook or you're on YouTube or whatever you're on, you just say, oh, thumbs up, thumbs down. I like this, I don't like that. What you're actually doing is you're telling little bits of information about yourself and how you think and how you behave. Think about that in a larger scale. When you do that over the, say, 10 years, you've liked and disliked a whole lot of stuff. Computers know a lot about you, so they can start making decisions about what, you know, sometimes you get that email, you're like, well, how do they know this about me? Or somebody calls you and says, hey, this information, you want to buy this? And you're like, how do they know that? It's because maybe 5 years ago, you was liking that thing from the beach, and maybe you liked some pictures or something that you should have been liking, and you just like some other things. But whatever you did, you actually gave them information about you that they could use to build a profile. And that's persisting, meaning it's not going anywhere. So what I would say is an undiagnosed risk is the fact that people are at companies and they're constantly clicking that up and down, and nobody has any idea what that data is going to be used for in the future. So that's the biggest risk.
Actually, that was very insightful answer for everyone, be it a leader or be it a consumer, I guess. Moving to the next question, Ibrahim. What lessons can leaders learn from brands that successfully reinvented themselves during challenging times?
Well,
any particular example that you would like to discuss?
I'm going to speak now as a consultant, as a marketing consultant, not as an academic professor, because sometimes there is a sort of a gap between both of them. And I always believe that the only constant in life is change, whether it's challenging or regular standard times. So under this, my always advice, and then I saw this as successful for our businesses, is that R&D. Dr. Victor talked about innovation, and a lot of people do not know the difference between inventions and innovations. Invention is creating something from scratch, but innovation is the continuous process of researching and development. And I think at turbulent times, successful companies don't stop R&D. They actually start to improve and develop their products, maybe to the upper scale, maybe to the lower scale. It depends on their target and their markets. And then the second thing is what we call it in marketing, the customer lifetime value. We know by research that it costs 5 times more to get a new customer than to retain an existing one. And that's why a lot of companies who are successful, they care less during turbulent time about acquiring new customers at the expense of maintaining and protecting and increasing the pocket value from their current customers. I think this is the second advice. The third one is you have to be empathetic with your customers. If you don't show empathy to your markets and to your customers, they are not going to like you when times comes for a good booming times. I think empathy is also a third name of the game for successful companies as examples. Dr. Victor talked about Blockbuster. I'm going to talk about Netflix. It's a good example of success, which actually, by the way, they went to Blockbusters trying to buy them out, and they declined Blockbuster to buy Netflix. And they took it over. They were very empathetic about their customers, and they started live streaming. And then COVID came, and obviously we know where Netflix is now. The same things for many Chinese companies that work, that had bad reputation about electric cars. Now the top electric car in the world is BYD, believe in your dream, as they say, and they innovated. They have the top battery in global terms. So these are examples of agility, examples of R&D, examples of being empathetic to the customer, understanding what they need and what they want in these current situations, and they develop accordingly. And I think these are my personal experience as a consultant.
These are two very useful examples, I would say. Now, Nick, you talked about, Jim, you talked about not having clarity at some critical situations from every leader. So, according to you, what are the biggest mistakes organizations make when they manage people during risk or uncertain situations?
Some of the answers we got this morning, those presentations this morning was great. Two things is one, focusing on building trust. As trust increases, and a lot of leaders, we're not trained to do that. We know how to manage the job, but you have to focus on building trust. As trust increases through storytelling and all these other things, that is what captures me. I'm not the product. No, I'm being committed to the stories in the future. I think that's one thing. And the second and most final thing is when organizations don't pay attention to when their leaders and their high potentials go quiet. They're like, everything is good, Jim. You should look, our engagement scores or this. I'm like, that's not the reality of what's happening in the culture. And they're like, yeah, we went up 5 points. They're like, yeah, because they don't trust that this is confidential. And you've also, by the way, connected your engagement scores to the leader's compensation. Of course you're going to get it. So I think, being able to separate those things out for organizations, and knowing that every person's not in the organization for the same reason. So all of us could be an intact leadership team, but we're not on this leadership team for the very same reasons. We're at different phases in our career. Some may be here as a next step to something else. Others may be here to retire soon. Others may be here just for the benefits, and I don't like you as my boss. So you have to really dig into who you have around you in order to really change the culture. And I think that's where leaders miss it and organizations miss it. A one-size-fits-all just does not work anymore.
Perfect. That's very insightful answer. Now, Nick, what's the one mindset shift every leader needs before stepping into a volatile market?
What mind shift?
Mindset shift. Every leader should have when they step into such kind of situations.
Yeah, I would give one example. So we actually run what are called research test beds for National Science Foundation, which is a civilian agency, as well as a Defense Department. And so we work with startups, maybe 2 people in a garage, helping them test and evaluate their technologies in that real-world environment. So we actually had a drone maker, a few people in a garage, come and do a demonstration in front of a bunch of VIPs sitting here. The drone went right over their head and crashed right into the control tower at this airfield. I mean, you could just see the whole team's face just crestfallen. But working with them over weeks and months around how to update and integrate that drone system into this new Army environment, they were able to come down 6 months later and do another demonstration, proving even more capabilities beyond what they were there at that first demonstration for. And so the mindset has to be about resilience. It can't just be the ribbon cutting or the press release or that first demo. It has to be working over months or sometimes years to get that technology working.
Okay. Now we are moving towards the last round of individual questions. So, Victor, if you are advising a CEO facing major disruption today, where would you tell them to look for their next opportunity?
Yeah, I guess that's a profound question that we have. And I guess every one of you who came up with your own business model would have been having numerous ways of looking at how you came up with this, looking at stakeholders, looking at the customer demand, looking at industry needs, all this. But I'm a fan of looking at historical patterns and in the past. If you look at it, one of those greatest needs were always solved by certain technology that actually resolve human challenges. If you look in the past, to travel, I mean, I heard some of you came from Brazil, that you fly almost 28 hours here, yeah, the lady right from behind, yes, or even 30 hours. In the past, to have flying from Latin America all the way to this part of the world in Southeast Asia is inconceivable. I think you go by ships, that will probably take you a long time, maybe years. But here it is, we invented the aerospace, we invented the railway, and that solved the problem of distance. And therefore, many of you arrive from many other countries through aerospace and even train. The second part we've seen when it comes to people working, and we find that a lot of works are laborious, and hence we came out with, and laborious-wise, we do not have all the energy to carry a lot of things, and here it is, electricity came about, steam engine, and therefore it powered the railway, rail trains, and all the rest. That solved the other problem as well. And in the past, in some of you who is about my age or about so, you realize that there was an era when knowledge was everything. And we say the one with the most insights and the greatest knowledge will win the war. And internet came about. And now you can get your knowledge from almost everywhere, and even your artificial intelligence. And to solve cognitive problem, sometimes we looked at certain things in buildings. There are hairline cracks that human eyes can't see. And here it is, we deploy the robots that can actually solve the cognitive problems. They can see hairline cracks. They use UV. They use in ultraviolet, etc. So, and of course, the latest that we have seen, that the greatest IPO that we've seen, and that created the first trillionaire that we saw. And the business model was looking at how do we, when, of course, if we ran out of space in the planet, in Earth, and if it get too hot, and already many countries are very hot during the summer, and they say, how about conquering space, and SpaceX came about. So what business model do we look at and what trend? It usually is solving the greatest human challenges. And the bigger the challenge you solve, the bigger the amount of that returns that you have. So I guess in here, looking at historical patterns of what the challenges and problem, and as it is in the beginning of this conference, we highlighted all this plethora of problems from cybersecurity, from even leadership issues, from sustainability, from food, from energy, that requires a lot more innovation and invention, and definitely a business model. So I guess that's where you should seek inspiration from. Thank you.
That's right. So my next question is about AI. And as you know, AI accelerates digital transformation. What new opportunities and vulnerabilities should leaders prepare for?
Can you repeat the question again? So what should they prepare for, you said now?
Yeah, what new opportunities and vulnerabilities leaders should prepare for after AI, or maybe coping up with AI?
So the impact of using AI on human beings. We've seen a lot of conversations about talking about AI, and we've even talked about, like, well, can AI truly think, or can it make decisions, or can we believe it, can we trust it? The answer is yes, 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 and I'll tell you why. Hear me out. So human beings are prone to following patterns. So if I go onto my AI and I type in and say, give me 4 plus 4, and give me the answer is 8, and I do it 10 times, would I trust it? Absolutely. And if I went on there and you asked me for an answer to a question and I got it from AI and I told it to you, would you trust me? So then what happens is, one was first degree trust, the other was second degree trust. You trusted it because it gave you the right answers and it gave it to you multiple times. So even if on the 11th time it gave you the wrong answer, it gave you the wrong answer. So what leaders need to look out for is the fact that when we're giving people tasks and they're doing the same task repeatedly with AI, what's going to happen is they're going to believe, even if they get the wrong answer. And I'm going to give it to our good friend Roy, Dr. Roy, about, he said, well, when you're using AI, you got bad data. Right. When you got bad data, it's useless. But people are having this bad data in their AI and they're using it. And even if 1/10 of the data is good and it's giving them the right answer, they'll believe that the other 90% of that data is good. So although you may know that the data isn't good, they don't know that, so they'll start to believe it. So what I really think is the big thing that need to look out for is the fact that the people are using AI on a consistent basis, especially if they're solving simplistic problems and it's giving the right answer. It'll build up a tolerance in them that when they get to a more difficult question, that they're going to get the right answer. Why would they not believe it?
Right. So my next question, you want to add something? I thought you were adding something to this.
No, I was telling you. You're right.
So I guess this question is again for you as a consultant. So how is AI transforming customer engagement, and what risks should businesses avoid?
Oh my God. First of all, my PhD was in 1990. So if I am a marketing professor, I'm supposed to be a marketing consultant in 2026, then obviously my PhD degree is obsolete. That's why I actually studied digital marketing through the Digital Marketing Institute. I'm a student, and I also studied AI in marketing. And my God, when you look around, I was preparing a curriculum to teach AI in marketing at AUC, American University in Cairo. And a year later, I thought it's obsolete, so I don't have to teach it because everything is changing rapidly, honestly. Now we have 4 types of AI. We have generative AI. It helps most of us in terms of content creation. You have Gemini, you have ChatGPT, you have Midjourney, And the list keeps scrolling up more and more. And then you have the predictive AI, where it can tell you about predictions and forecasting. We have CRM, customer relationship management softwares, applications. We don't have to wait for customers to tell us what's wrong and what's right. We have now AI can help us to predict and forecast. And the third, which is very alarming, is what we call it agentic AI. Now the first two were human to devices. Now it is device to a device. I mean, this is very, very dangerous, the agentic, and I'm sure most of us have heard one. And then the new kid in the block in AI is the decisionizing, the optimizing AI, which actually going to take over and make decision on our behalf. As you bluntly explained it, we are all under scrutiny from whatever apps that we're using, whether it is US app-based or use a Chinese app-based, and God knows what's next coming. So this is a very, very strong challenges. It helps, definitely it helps, because number one, you have these AI generative apps. They are hyper-personalizing their message. I was just sending a message to different target segments in Egypt with just one prompt, telling him this is my target A profile, target B profile, target C, and everything is generated in terms of picture, captions, reels, everything. Mid-Journeys do a lot of things nowadays, So this is one of the, the good things about AI. The second one is what we call a proactive engagement. We don't have to wait for customer, again, to give us any feedback. We have the CRM programs. And the third, which is a bit surprising, is that we have to learn. We have to keep learning, and companies have to keep learning. And the problem is that you don't have the skills and the human skills that actually know how to deal with AI in many parts of the world. So I think this is a challenge, and these are lessons that we have to keep looking at.
So be it AI or not, organizations, leaders should never stop learning and learning. Yeah.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, definitely.
The reason why they don't know is because they're using AI to achieve their goals. So traditionally, people would have learned how to do things, but because they're using AI to do the things for them, they never learn how to actually achieve the goals. Yes.
Again, continuing the AI questions. While AI is reshaping work and work culture, where should organizations invest to future-proof their workforce?
3 years ago, I would have said no, only because I'm just not an early adopter, and I was hoping that this AI phase would go away before you let me retire and not have to get into it. However, that's not the case. And Kelvin and I were having some real good discussions, because as you could tell, he believes in it, and I'm like, ugh. But I will say this, AI can summarize a lot of data in, record time. It can provide you a lot of options. But what I'm seeing in leaders in organizations is you can't use that. I guess when you mention bad data, you still have to use judgment. And, AI will give you a decision, but that might not be the right decision in the context for which you need it. And so I've seen people rely heavily on AI and say, well, AI said this, but you need to put it within the right context. So I will say today, and especially with the presentations we heard this morning, organizations should teach their employees and their leaders to not be me, not be afraid of AI, but instead embrace it and understand how it can complement your work. And I think one of the slides this morning said, the people who are going to do the best are those who learn how to utilize AI to help them advance their role even more. So, yes. See, Kelvin, I told you I was going to say something positive about it.
Yeah, so my last question of this segment is to you, Nick. How do you build programs meant to last when the ground beneath them keeps moving?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, of making sure you distilling the benefits of these programs down to something that's easable, understandable to lots of different audiences. making sure that it's, as I was saying before, not just a demo or a press release or ribbon cutting, but working with those communities, those stakeholders, to make sure that they're making progress every day, every week, every year. So we spend lots of time working with lots of different programs, ensuring that they're taking these technologies that have been developed by a startup or a university researcher or a student, and making sure that this can safely be deployed in their community to create new services. And then how do we think through how other communities around the country can also benefit in the same way? And so that's the best way for folks to really put themselves in that position of my small part can have a huge impact, not only in my community, but around the country, around the globe.
Thanks for answering these individual questions. Now I am having few interactive debate questions. I'll ask the questions and open it. Like all of you or any one of you can answer the questions according to your way. My first question is the risk management becoming more important than innovation, or must two of them evolve together?
I think you have to have both. You have functions, legal, HR, others who will manage the risk. But if you're scared to step out, then you won't have the innovation. So I think you have to have both, and each organization has its own tolerance with that. As a chief HR officer, I'm always sort of clashing with the chief legal officer who's like, Jim, you can't let employees do that. I'm like, well, I don't want to put handcuffs on them either. And usually the CEO is like, okay, we're going to end this meeting. We're going to let Jim and Karen solve this because we're going back and forth. It's because we're both coming at it from a very different perspective. So I think you need both.
I think earlier on I did speak about the shield and the sword. And in here, I think innovation creates tomorrow, surely. But if you have no governance, governance guarantee of tomorrow. So you need both to be in hand. Innovation, runaway innovation, as we were talking about AI, that is autonomous, that can be self-destructive, and without the proper guardrails, it's a problem. So I guess in here, what do we keep, if all of you are asking and said, well, I hear you, we innovate, but here it is, you also have the risk. How do you manage it? I'll say, I think for the company, we should keep our purpose, our mission, our values, in terms of how principles is when it comes to decision making. Then what can we change? I think the methods, how we deliver, the approach, the process, and the way how this technology adoption changes all the time. We can evolve it. But, and so ultimately, what do we distill? And we say, what do we keep in there? I think your core purpose, a organization is purposeful and missionary. You basically understand that what principles guides you and who is the stakeholder you actually serve. That process and the means towards that, then is actually something that can evolve with the technology and the crisis.
So I'll say I agree that you need both, but how you use them depends on your industry. So if you're in the finance industry, you really need a lot of risk management because money is stable, solid. You're not going to have a lot of change or deviation in it. But I'm going to take it from the standpoint of, well, look, the good guy versus the bad guy. Do you think bad guys really care about risk management? No, they only care about innovation. So if you focus on risk management, they're going to beat you. And even if somebody was to start a business, you're going to innovate much faster than your risk management. So you're going to want to have high risk tolerance because you want to not be concerned with it, you want to innovate. So you do need both, but you got to look at that as a sliding scale based upon what your goal are. So if you're trying to be innovative, then you got to have high risk tolerance. But if you're like, I'm in a stable industry, then you want to have lower risk tolerance and don't innovate a lot. So it depends on what your goals are in it.
I want just to talk about a little thing different. You know, we have nowadays, because of social media, look at the influencers. Influencers, these are sort of new business models. They are online business models. The typical, and I'm sorry to say, the typical management functions that used to exist before, you know, the revolution of the internet and the social media created a new business models, remote work, individuals entrepreneurials. I mean, these are small size, they're not large size. I totally agree with you in terms of established long-term, medium, large size companies. But hey, there is a new kid in the block in terms of management. Look how many bloggers, look how many social media influencers are existing, how much they make money. And they are individual, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 managing the whole business. We had one speaker before from the US. I mean, she's one. And she said she's running now her business. So there is a new terminology of business models that are online and have to have different ways of management. I don't think the same practical, old-fashioned management function, which is doable for large companies. I have nothing to say against this, and correct me if I'm wrong. But we have to see what is happening now. This is a change in management, a change on the profile of companies that are existing and actually developing around the globe, not just in the region like Middle East, it's everywhere. The businesses, and we always say that 10% only of those who manage GDP of countries are the large companies, and 95 to 90% are small businesses and enterprises. Management is totally different. Add to it now that the trend is going to be individualistic more than collectively. And I think this needs a lot of research and understanding from the HR perspective that has different ways of management, I believe.
Okay, I have one last question, if time permits, and that is, what is one risk that most leaders are ignoring today that could become tomorrow's biggest opportunity? Ignoring today that can become tomorrow's biggest opportunity.
I'm about to go with the AI again. The impact of AI in wearable technology, I talked about it a bit earlier, but think about the glasses. What happens? So look, right now I'm on the stage, and you know the old adage, hey, if you're nervous, picture everybody naked. I shouldn't say that, you think? Well, I just said it. But with that being said, with wearable technology, when people's putting it on, they're changing the perspective of how they see the world. That's crazy, right? Because somebody can see something that's not really there. So the big opportunity comes in not giving it to them, but understanding how to help them stay sane after they've used it for a while. Because if you use something and it alters how you see reality, meaning if I turn the color red, blue, and then you take them off, what would you do? You start fiending to put them back on because you want things to go back to how you want them to be. And what's going to happen with this wearable technology is going to start giving people what they want. And so we're going to see a big boom in the industry of helping people to manage how to get back to the real world.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I would just mention, in addition to working with our communities around AI, we also use it every day. So note-taking, generating documents, interacting with communities, hundreds or sometimes thousands of people at a time. All those things are able to be done because for our small team that just would never possibly scale without AI at the back end of all of those meetings or project management or interaction management. All of these tools are available to us now that weren't there 2 years ago and are going to evolve in the next 10 years. It's hard to even imagine how they're going to change in time.
I think there are two things which it's totally ignored nowadays. In any society, it's a pyramid shape, where you have the upper class is smaller, and then we call it the bottom of the pyramid. A lot of companies are ignoring that the bottom of the pyramid is usually very profitable, but depends how you reach them and how you try to satisfy the needs here. So that's an opportunity that I saw whenever multinational companies try to look at the bottom of the pyramid of any society. It doesn't mean the poor only, but it means in every society there is this hierarchy of social stratas. And so bottom of the pyramid, if it is ignored, is the future opportunity, especially now with the challenging time that we face. And I think this is an opportunity that should not be ignored. The other one is I believe in the speech by our colleague from the UAE, he's talking about sustainability. And I think this social entrepreneurship where the pyramid and the pillars are totally ignored. A lot of people think of two only, which is the customer and the impact, the profitable impact. But a lot of people neglect about this environment issue, which is the social environment, natural environment, and I think this is an opportunity. We can look at it in terms of waste management. There is a lot of opportunities here that are ignored by large companies if they don't look at it from this triangle perspective. I think this is also a missed opportunity by many companies.
Well, I had two. One, Kelvin got, was the AI, but the second one that just reminded me of, probably it was COVID, where organizations, we began to really see the importance of overall well-being and mental health. And I really believe across the globe, people have now developed a new psychological relationship with work. And so in many of the leaders and executives I coach, where we're focused on work, 90% of the time, they bring in something very personal. And people are not separating work, family, home, time, health, and all those things. So I think organizations need to probably look at those offerings. I mentioned earlier, people want journeys, not job. Within that is the overall well-being as well.
On my side, just to highlight a bit of a background, that we invested in AI. We actually had venture funds, and we actually had an AI that we invested for construction industry. At the same time, we also invested in the carbon credit exchange on sustainability. And we had also a part that we feel biomedical, life, it's also healthcare is one part of it. Now, but across this tree, if I were to pick one, and I would say that I want, if you see the intersection of what the challenges that we face day to day, you just need to flip the paper. And right now, I saw in France, Paris, they highlighted that a policy was you can't have alcohol during the day. And why is it so? Because they were having this risk of dehydration. And why? It was one of the hottest summer that we had. And you also read about some sad tragedy of it, that look, a lot of people were trying to immerse in the river, and then they get swept away and they get actually drowned while in France, and many other countries too. And we see the one of the greatest heat wave across all countries now, especially summer. I would say sustainability, that in terms of mankind-wise, that if we do not crack the sustainability issues, we do not save this earth that we are all residing on. And we try to solve any other problems, I guess we might end up succeeding in technological advances, creating trillionaires, and here it is with no planet to live on. And I think sustainability must have been something that we have at heart, to see that it not only solves, because it's actually one that advances the society, but it protects the society as well. And I guess here it is that to put the money on it, we are into sustainability. We invest in carbon credit exchange. We also do IoT blockchain into carbon projects. And we actually do climate finance as well. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. The answers were very insightful as well as thought-provoking. Before concluding this discussion, I would just like to put a small scenario that talks about risk, opportunity, success, and confidence. As you know, this conference or this event was going to happen in Dubai itself first, and it was our second edition. First we did was October 2025, and we had pretty much confidence, like we can do it, so we launched the second edition, and then on the 1st or 2nd of March, I guess, this war thing happened, and then there was crisis in front of us because leaders from 20-25 plus different countries won't be taking risk to fly over there. Then we were having this discussion internally, what should be done, and it was pretty much clear the destination was not okay. Then we had to shift the destination to Singapore. That was the risk that we took, and at the same time that was opportunity for us as well to explore the new destination. And after seeing this much response or the confidence in us, I feel it like that risk and opportunity became successful. And if you take a risk, it becomes successful, that boosts your confidence, I would say, as a leader. So that was the point that moment where I would like to conclude this conversation, like risks, opportunity, success can lead to boost your confidence. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving your time, valuable time, and flying here to Singapore and discuss on this platform. Thanks a lot.